Welcome back. Building and administrating software applications can be complex wherever you deploy them. Whether they're on-premise or in the cloud, you'll face a lot of moving parts existing in a universe where they all have to play nicely together or the whole thing can collapse. To help lower the bar of entry into the cloud, some AWS services will handle much of the underlying infrastructure for you, allowing you to focus on your application needs. The benefits of a managed service are sometimes offset by the premium pricing, but it's often well worth the cost. One important example of such a managed service is the Relational Database Service, or RDS. RDS, as you'll see in Chapter 9, the core database service, lets you set the basic configuration parameters for a database engine of your choice, gives you an endpoint address through which your application can connect to the database, and takes care of all the details invisibly. Besides being responsible for making top-level configuration decisions, you won't need to worry about maintaining the database instance, the database software updates, or data replication. One step beyond a managed service, which handles only one part of your deployment stack for you, is a managed deployment, where the whole stack is taken care of behind the scenes. All you need to do to make things work with one of these services is your application code. If it's a website you're after, you're content. Until Amazon figures out how to secretly listen in on your organization's plannings, meetings, and then automatically convert your ideas to code without you knowing, things are unlikely to get much simpler than this. Two services that AWS has created which manage deployments are Amazon Lightsail and AWS Elastic Beanstalk, which we'll discuss next. So, Lightsail is promoted as a low-stress way to enter the Amazon cloud world. It offers blueprints that, when launched, will automatically provision all the compute, storage, database, and networking resources needed to make your deployment work. You set the price level you're after. Currently, that'll cost you somewhere between $3.50 and $160 each month, and an additional script that will be run on your instance at startup, and AWS will take over. For context, $3.50 will get you 512 megs of memory, one virtual CPU, and 20 gigs of solid-state storage, and 1 terabyte of data transfer. Lightsail uses all the same tools, such as the AMIs and instances you saw earlier in the chapter, to convert your plans into reality. Since it's all AWS from top to bottom, you're also covered should you later decide to move your stack directly to EC2, where you'll have all the added access and flexibility that is standard to that platform. Because things are packaged in blueprints, you won't have the unlimited range of tools for your deployments that you can get from EC2 itself, but as you can see from these lists, there's still a nice selection. So you have operating systems. You can choose from Amazon Linux, Ubuntu, Debian, FreeBSD, OpenSUSE, and Windows. You can have applications such as WordPress, Magneto, Drupal, Joomla, Redmine, and Plesk. And then stacks, Node.js, GitLab, LAMP, Mean, and Ning. So you have plenty of options from Lightsail, and like I said, you just pretty much just supply your pick the blueprint and go for it, and then you're responsible for just your code or that on top of it, or if you choose WordPress, right, your content, type in your content or that, but everything else is set up and running for you. So, Elastic Beanstalk is even simpler than Lightsail. All expected from you is to define the application platform and then upload your code. That's it. You can choose between pre-configured environments, including Go, .NET, Java, Node.js, or PHP, and a number of Docker container environments. The code for Docker applications is defined with special formatted Docker JSON files. And one key difference between the two services is that while Lightspeed bills at a flat rate between $3.50 and $160, Beanstalk generates cost according to how resources are consumed. You don't get to choose how many virtual CPUs or how much memory you will use. Instead, your application will scale its resources consumption according to demand. Should say your WordPress site go viral and attract millions of viewers one day, AWS will invisibly ramp up the infrastructure to meet the demand. As demand falls, your infrastructure will simply drop and shrink. Keep this in mind, as such variations in demand will determine how much you will be billed for each month. So Lightsail is a flat fee, but it's also locked in sizing. So if you were to get a rush, right, your servers could get overwhelmed. Whereas Beanstalk is scalable and elastic, and so it can scale up or scale in depending on demand, but your billing is not fixed, so you could end up with a very large bill if you get a lot of traffic. So even virtualized servers like EC2 tend to be resource hungry. They do, after all, act like discrete standalone machines running on top of a full stack operating system. That means that having 5 or 10 of these virtual servers on a physical server host involves some serious duplication, because each one will require its own OS, kernel, and device drivers. So now we'll dive into some solutions that can remove this duplication. Containers and serverless workloads. So containers is a technology such as Docker. It's one of the leading container software technologies. Avoid a lot of that overhead of virtualization by allowing individual containers to share the same Linux kernel with the physical host. They're also able to share common elements called layers with other containers running on a single host. This makes Docker containers fast to load and execute, and also lets you pack more container workloads on a single hardware platform. You're always free to fire up one or more EC2 instances, install Docker, and use them to run as many containers as you like, but keeping all the bits and pieces talking to each other can get complicated. Instead, you can use either Amazon Elastic Container Service, ECS, or Amazon Elastic Container Service for Kubernetes, EKS, to orchestrate swarms of Docker containers on AWS using EC2 resources. Both of these services manage the underlying infrastructure for you, allowing you to ignore the messy details and concentrate on administrating Docker itself. What's the difference between ECS and EKS? Broadly speaking, they both have the same big picture goals, but EKS gets there by using the popular open source Kubernetes orchestration tool, and they are different paths to the same place. Serverless functions. The serverless computing model uses a resource footprint that's even smaller than the one left by containers. Not only do serverless functions not require their own OS kernel, but they tend to spring into existence, perform some task, and then just as quickly die within minutes, if not even seconds. On the surface, Amazon's serverless service, which is Lambda, looks at a bit like Elastic Beanstalk. You define your function by setting a runtime environment such as Node.js, .NET, or Python, and then upload your code you want the function to run. But unlike Beanstalk, Lambda functions run only when triggered by a preset event. It could be a call from your mobile application, a change to a separate AWS resource, such as an S3 bucket, or a log-based alert. If an hour or week passes without a trigger, Lambda won't launch and won't run, and you won't be billed. If there are 1,000 concurrent executions, Lambda will scale automatically to meet the demand. Lambda functions are short-lived. They'll time out after 15 minutes, so they're meant for very short workloads, and a large majority of Lambdas are probably geared to run for less than a minute, and maybe just even milliseconds. But they're incredible. They're low cost. You only get charged when they're run and called. But yeah, they definitely take away all the need to manage the infrastructure underneath, and you just worry about your code. So we discussed quite a bit. This is the end of lesson 7. In lesson 8, we'll be discussing and covering core storage services. We'll finally really do a deeper dive into storage and options that we have related to storage. See you in the next video.